Welcome, my most amazing artists. I am so excited to bring you one of my all-time favorite art lessons, how to create these beautiful three-dimensional flower arrangements. They are perfect for any skill level and wonderful to unlock your creative potential. This beautiful lesson was created by the talented art educator Mandy Culver and is linked in the video's description. She's inspired art teachers everywhere, including the amazing Nyla Khan. The materials you'll need are a pencil and eraser, white and colored paper, watercolor paper, circle stencils, black Sharpies, liquid watercolors, paintbrushes, a pair of scissors, hot glue, tracing paper. All of the materials will be linked in the video's description. The elements of art that we'll explore while creating our flowers are line, shape, color, as well as principles of design, repetition, and balance. Now, before we begin creating our very own flowers, let's take a look at some of my incredible student examples. Keep in mind, these are only third grade artists, so this really is perfect for any age. We'll take a closer look at these later in the video. In class for my students, I cut a half of an 18-inch by 24-inch paper in half. I typically use 90-pound watercolor paper. Now, if you're not at class, feel free to use any kind of watercolor paper you might have. You'll just need a couple of sheets. I like to use my yardstick to create a nice crisp edge with my pencil, to use my scissors to cut that piece of paper in half. Now, if I was at school, I would just use my paper cutter. Next, to create a balanced composition, we're going to want to draw 4 to 6 large flowers and 4 to 6 large leaves. You're going to want to use your ruler, some circle stencils, large bowls or cups, anything that will aid in drawing your flowers. As artists, it's always important to have reference materials for inspiration. I like to provide my students with these flower designs and doodles, as well as books. I'll link all of those in the video's description. To keep it simple so you don't feel overwhelmed, keep in mind, when creating your flowers and leaves, they are just a series of simple, repeated lines and shapes creating patterns, which then create more complex, organic shapes. Use all of that previous knowledge of lines and shapes to create your flowers. While doing so, take a look again at some of these amazing student examples. By looking at how diverse these student examples are, you can really see that the possibilities in creating your unique flower arrangements are endless. Once I've finished completing the basic shape and size and outline of my flower, I'm going to go back in and add decorative details for visual interest. Again, these can be realistic looking or more whimsical and fun and abstract. That's up to you as the artist. Now here's a little tip and trick to help you draw your petals the same size. Use a larger circle stencil or object to trace around lightly that center smaller circle. That'll help create your symmetry and making sure that your petals are the same size. Now, as you work to fill your pieces of paper, use some of those smaller sections or areas and add some leaves, trying to make good use of all of that surface space on your paper. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the drawing of every single flower and leaf, as this really isn't a tutorial on how to draw each flower. It's more of just inspiration to help get your creative juices flowing. Next, grab those Sharpies, artists. It is time to trace all of those beautiful flowers and leaves with your Sharpies. Now, unlike Miss Culver's lesson, which requires black oil pastels to draw your flowers and leaves, I'll be using Sharpie. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you know how much I love Sharpies, and using a variety of sizes, from extra fine tip to regular to chisel. Varying line qualities from thick to thin always create areas of visual interest to the elements of your drawing. Now that we've traced all of our lines, it's time to paint, which, if you know me, that's my favorite part. My favorite type of paint to use for this is liquid watercolors. They are highly pigmented, vibrant, and easy to blend. I spread them out in these little containers, as well as you're going to need some water. If you don't have those little containers, just use little cups. Keep in mind when painting, these paints will stain. Now, why, in my opinion, are liquid watercolors so special? When you are painting your flowers, you are going to experiment with both wet on dry and wet on wet techniques. It's what makes watercolor so unique. It's where the magic happens. You are creating two areas of wet paint, allowing them to move, blend, or bleed into one another, creating beautiful color combinations and spontaneous effects. Now here's a quick tip on how to get that butterfly or insect you're drawing symmetrical. Simply just draw one half of it, and once you've drawn one half, grab a piece of tracing paper and trace over it nice and dark, pressing firmly. Once you've drawn all of the elements, flip it over, match it up, and trace again, pressing firmly, making sure that all of that graphite transfers to your piece of paper. And then just go ahead and sketch it back in. Now, once all of your beautiful leaves and flowers have dried, it's time to cut them out. Now, this is where my third graders struggled and needed some assistance. So if you don't get a chance to cut all of them out in one class setting, go ahead and put some of them in a plastic bag labeled with their name and paper clip them to whichever flowers they haven't yet cut out. Next, you'll need a 12 by 12 inch white piece of paper for your border or frame and a 10 by 10 inch colored paper of your choice to assemble your flowers on. When picking your paper, make sure you're choosing what will best complement and suit your color scheme and composition. Just begin sort of placing and moving flowers to see where they'll fit the best. Once you've created a balanced composition that you're happy with, use a dot of hot glue to adhere each piece in its desired place. Your final step is to put a dot of glue in each of the four corners and press it down, adhering your paper to your white frame. And now you've created a beautiful and unique three-dimensional floral arrangement. Bravo, my most amazing artists! If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I look forward to creating with you again very soon.